All right, folks, we are in the home stretch now. We've had an opportunity to cover 4 really awesome videos. Gosh, that really does sound conceited, doesn't it? I don't mean it that way. I just like the idea about being able to emote and be able to draw and render what our why looks like. We've covered Simon Sinek and his use of the golden circle as a means to say that all decisions are driven by emotion, which implies that you need to explain to someone why it really matters to them before we jump in and start telling them what we do or how we do it. We used that concept to build out what our own why would look like, and then there were a couple of alternate views in which we could present that why, followed by how we would then render on the whiteboard the how and the what. What I'd like to do is use this last video to give you some tips and tricks when it comes to using a whiteboard. Now, these kinds of tips and tricks can also be applied, some of them to how you communicate in a public setting. I'll leave it up to you to how you choose to adopt them or not. So the very first thing that I want to share with you is before you stand up in front of the audience, make sure you remove distractions. This flopping around as I move around is a distraction, so we want to make sure that what we are doing is making sure that all attention is focused on our message. Now, distractions are not just for when you're presenting. Distractions are also necessary for the prep time. This is crucial. Prep time. Practice. Practice. And of course, practice. I cannot stress enough, the last thing that you want to do is get up in front of an audience, whether you're presenting or using a whiteboard, and just get tongue-tied like that. Not knowing exactly what you want to say, or worse, get halfway through one point and forget, where was I going to go with this other piece here? So I'm going to tell you, the more that you practice, the more that you go through this message, the more that you internalize, you think about what that means to you. The more that you practice articulating it, the more that you practice drawing, the easier it's going to be for you to whiteboard. Even if you don't have a whiteboard, even if you don't have a blank piece of paper, the more that you practice, the easier it is for you to be able to tell this story anytime and in your own way. All right, number 3. This is my favorite one. I love art. I love to draw. I love to render things visually. It's exactly the way that I learn as well, as it turns out. So that's why it's so important to me. So you don't have to be a full-blown artist. Okay, so I don't want you to think that you have to get up on a whiteboard and start practicing how you would render the Mona Lisa. It's not a requirement. Right? All you have to be able to do is render your idea in a way that is visually represented and resonates with the audience. When you get back to the practice piece, think about the kinds of things that you want to be able to render, that you want to be able to draw. Practice those, not just your message. For example, if I want to use, let's say, an eye to indicate this is a feature of our product that allows you to find something. Right? So when I use an eye, I'm just going to create a half circle. I'm thinking in my head what an eyeball looks like. Then I'm going to come down with a bottom circle. This is a big eye. Then I've got to give it a little bit more definition. And depending on how much time I have, I can keep going through here and just give it enough context to where the person that's going to be viewing this is going to understand what I've drawn here. Right? So I don't have to do anything other than draw what amounts to a circle of some kind with a circle inside of it with another circle and some squiggly lines on the outside of it. My point is, you don't have to be an artist. It kind of looks like a weird porcupine fish though, doesn't it? Right? So the more that you practice, the more that you'll think less about what you're drawing and just naturally draw it. Okay? Know your space. Know how much room you have to work with. Right? So obviously I've stepped way outside of my working space. Bring yourself back into it. Try not to cover up the core pieces of your message, because then your audience isn't going to really know what it is you're trying to tell them, because they're going to be looking at what you're drawing. Right? Make sure your markers are in good working order. I always carry 2 sets myself in my bag. If I were to walk off camera and grab my bag and bring it over, which I'll do. And I were to reach inside of that bag, in the right pocket, I would bring out a set of markers that I keep with me at all times. Check this out. Not is it just multi-colors, but also different sizes, because I never know what kind of whiteboard environment I'm going to be writing on. The other thing to understand about knowing your environment, aside from whether or not your pens are in good working order, is how to use an eraser. A lot of people like to put an eraser up and go back and forth just like that. On a whiteboard, going back and forth like that leaves marks. Make one motion away from your drawing, just like this. It's going to give you the cleanest erasure, but try your best not to erase, period, simply because you're not up there to impress them with your art skills. You're up there to convey a message just visually. So try not to erase at all. Just move past it. Don't apologize. Just, well, as my father would have said to you, just act like you've been there the whole time, or that you've always done this and that you've just taken a moment out of your life to do it for someone else. So just own your stage, right? That's what I mean by knowing your space, okay? Now, this is a break from the norm for me. This is something that I don't agree with in presenting verbally, like as if I had PowerPoint behind me or something like that. Is that you never want to talk with your back to the audience and your voice bouncing off of a whiteboard. However, you also want to minimize dead space. Let me give an example of what I'm talking about. Okay? I'm going to write, hello, my name is Scott. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to talk to you. Again, this gets back to practice, because what I'm asking you to do in doing this is to communicate, vocalize, while at the same time your hands are doing something that your brain is trying to tell it to do. So it'd be something like this. What I want to do is just go ahead and render for you, just a quick example of my name. So what I'm going to do is just write up here on the board what most of the people that I know call me. This is how they refer to me. This is how they get my attention. This is how they ask me to pay attention to them. Right? So I gave you a little finger or a little hand. I gave you my name is Scott, and I gave it some underlines. What I mean by dead space is something like this. What I'm going to do is write on the board, hi, my name is Scott, and show you what it's like to use a whiteboard to convey a message visually. It was really uncomfortable, wasn't it? It was very uncomfortable for me knowing that I was doing it. When I turn my back from the audience and I start writing and I'm not talking, it gives them time to check out. Your audience will stay with you 3 to 5 seconds, so you really need to be changing it up. And the way that you can do that is a couple of different ways. Now, like I said, I don't like to write and then talk and then have my back to the audience. So you can also break your message up just a little bit. So for example, if I were to use this same example, if I were to use this same rendering one more time and sort of break it up, it would look like this. You know what's interesting, folks, is whenever you're walking down the street, there's a lot of times where people will come up to you and they'll just sort of stick their hand out in this weird fashion, just like that. But whenever they do that, that's typically an indication that what they're trying to do is get your attention. And when people try to get your attention, one of the ways that we like to refer to each other is by using some kind of moniker that indicates who we are. So we would call that a name. So in this case, my name is Scott. And so when people are walking down the street and they wave at me, I should say, hi, my name is Scott. So there's a way for you to break it up. So I turn and I talk, I turn back and I write, I turn back and I talk. It doesn't make you look like you're out of control or you have a problem. It's just simply a way for you to keep the audience engaged and constantly check with them, right? In the spirit of knowing your space, know your skills. This kind of gets back to the artist piece of it. Know your skills. And know your environment from the perspective of how much time you have. The reason why I say that is because when you know what your skill set is and you know how you like to communicate, making eye contact with people, shifting around the room, making sure that everybody's involved, getting their input, asking them to contribute to what's being drawn on the board. These are all ways for you to know that environment. Know how much time you have. Keep in mind that your audience is going to check out on you if you're not careful. Right? Knowing your skills. What am I good at doing? Am I good at rendering an eye? Can I get up here on this board, draw what amounts to an eye for my audience in a way very quickly that they will know that I have drawn something that indicates looking or someone's eyeball? Or is it just good enough for me to draw a box and write the word I in it? Both of these convey the same message. So again, getting back to you don't have to be an artist. Know your environment, know your space, know your skills and your limitations, and then make them work for you. Okay? I'm going to give you just two more. There's tons of them out there. I would highly encourage you to look at anything along the lines of visual meetings or the power of the presentation or presentation zen, just any of these that help you convey your story in a very engaging and pretty much an entertaining way. Okay, remember what I said about the eraser, right? Just again, practice, 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 practice. Right? I made a comment about what happens when you make a mistake. So here I am trying to convey the fact that with content intelligence, I can actually use the product to search for data. So I wanted to say, hey, look, you can search for data, and phonetically that is a correct spelling, but it is not the right way to write it. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to keep going. If someone calls me out on it, I'll be like, you know what, you're absolutely right. I'm not going to erase it because that makes me stop my method, my mode, to pick up an eraser, to change it, to then pick up the right writing tool again. So I'll just simply mark through it. Or what I would do is I would use this to my advantage. You're absolutely right. And had this whiteboard been content intelligence, I could have programmed in a synonym that indicates that SERCH is equivalent to SEARCH. That allows us to take like sort of spellings of words, even misspellings, and then group them together in such a way so that when I type in the word search, any document that's got a misspelled version of that word would also show up in my index as well. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Or I could have simply used the transformation capabilities of content intelligence to correct that spelling and then append it to the document or place it as some kind of tag in the metadata itself. This kind of gets back to what I'd said. Just act as if you've been there the whole time, right? I did that on purpose. It wasn't a mistake. But by all means, don't keep putting stuff down and picking it up. Now in the video series, you'd have seen me using different colored pens. Well, I did that to make sure that I caught your attention and that you and I could make sure that we separated concepts from each other and focus on the most important piece and then use that color combination to draw distinctions between two similar or dissimilar concepts. Okay? So again, just act as if you've been there. Know your skills and your limitations. Boxes, ladies and gentlemen, are absolutely just fine. If you have a problem speaking against the wall like this, that's not a problem. Just at times speak, turn and engage, and then back again. What you don't want to do is create dead air. Even 4 seconds is hardly uncomfortable. I don't like doing that at all, right? I'm going to give you one more. I've already gone twice the limit here on the number of things that people retain because they're only good at really retaining 3 things, 3 concepts. Okay, but I'm going to give you one more. This one's easy. And probably the most important. I want you to walk up to any whiteboard at any one time. Pick up that marker with one concept in mind. I want you to make it fun and keep it simple. Remember, your audience wants to hear your message. They want you to engage with them. And the value of a whiteboard requires that you do that. I mean, how many times have you gone to a meeting and you've got somebody standing there with a PowerPoint projection right up there behind them, and then this is what you get? Best practices. 1, remove distractions. 2, practice, practice, practice. 3, you get my drift. I don't want to go on and on about that. But I do want you to make it fun. I do want you to keep it as simple as possible. Make it fun for you as much as your audience. Keep it simple for your audience. Get them to engage for you and with you. Folks, these best practices and what you've seen in these sessions, these videos, I really think is going to go a long way to make your own whiteboarding activities and experiences a lot more compelling. Now, at any time, I would encourage you to pick up the phone and call me. Send me an email. Let's get on a call together, a WebEx, a Skype, or whatever. And if you have any questions, any doubts, any concerns, you want to talk through something, and hey, if you just want to shoot the breeze, give me a call. I'd love to spend some time with you to help you get better at delivering this message. The more that we are telling our customers why we exist, to make every bit of their data available to them in an insightful way so that they can take decisive actions on them, the more that we don't sound like a competitive product to ECS or Scality. The more that this business unit isn't tied to technology at all. Because you don't need the content platform to make data actionable or insightful or available. It just happens to be that's what we're using today to deliver on that. And so when Aspen comes out, or whatever the next big thing is that comes out, as long as it meets these 3 criteria that we've talked to our customers about, then it doesn't matter. This is what keeps you from having a competitive feature for feature comparison. There will be some that will ask for it. You can answer them. You can say, well, today we compete with these people. We only compete with them because of certain features within the product that we have and the way that we've decided to deliver our why in a very physical, be it hardware or software form, to help you get access to every bit of that data, to take raw data and turn it into something that is very insightful so that you can make some kind of informed action on it and only maintain that data for the length of time that it's required in a way that's convenient for the end users, anywhere they are, anytime that they need it, so that it does not compromise the requirements and obligations that the business has, whether those are internal obligations or regulatory or compliance-related obligations. This is why we're able to separate the data from the technology stack and from the workload for that matter. This is why we exist. Focus on these. Call me if you have any questions. Practice, by all means, practice. Deliver it. Well, you know what? I'm going to give you a 7th. I want you to pretend your audience is a bunch of 12-year-olds with bad eyesight. So in keeping with the make it fun, keep it simple. 12-year-olds. Not to pick on them, not to indicate that they're not smart or anything like that. Keep it simple. If a 12-year-old can understand the concept that you're going to use on a whiteboard, there's a good chance that any audience member, regardless of the role that they fill within that organization, is going to get it too. Pretend like they have bad eyesight. In other words, if I want to use that box to indicate a search feature of content intelligence. And I write that in there. I want you to pretend like the person in the very back of the room needs to be able to see that. I wrote it, I can barely read it. Okay? Not only is the size of the text that you write important, but also the time that you take to write it. Again, you don't want to stretch this out to an hour-long conversation just to write a box with the word I in it. But the last thing you want to do is something like that. Because at the end of this, you're going to expect someone to want to take a picture of it so they can save it for later. And then they look back at this, they're going to be like, is that an I? Was it a flat hill? Was it an attempt to draw a straight line? Now that doesn't mean that you need to sort of block draw everything, but to the best of your ability, keep in mind, your audience wants to hear your message, and they certainly want it to be memorable. So write legibly, practice, don't use cursive. Not everybody understands that. This is the easiest way to convey that message. And if you're in a mixed audience where you don't know if English is the first spoken language, certainly take the time to practice how you would render something graphically. You need ideas on how to do that, then you could certainly jump onto Google Images and just do a search for clip art for whatever the topic is that you need to draw. Take a look at it on the screen and then practice on a white piece of paper or on a whiteboard so that you get comfortable with it. Okay, folks, I'm going to leave you with these 7 things, so 6 that are really important and 1 that was a bonus that I want to make sure that you have access to. Practice, practice, practice. Again, reach out if you have any questions, but hey, best of luck to you. Take care, folks.